I now have the honor of introducing today's distinguished speaker, Craig Dietz. All of us have challenges to face during our lives, and Craig has faced what many would consider insurmountable challenges. Craig just calls it life and moves on. Despite being born without limbs, Craig has always been determined to live life to the fullest. In his spare time, Craig can be found bowling, skiing, playing volleyball, hunting, fishing, jamming on his drums, or tooling around the country in his van. Craig's biggest passion is swimming. He has completed open water swims across the U.S. and in South Africa, ranging in distance from 1 to 6.2 miles. What is special for us today is that we know Craig from his time as a Pitt Law student. He was where all of you are today, a mere 20 years ago, graduating from law school. After graduation, Craig worked for 10 years as an attorney for the cities of Pittsburgh and Harrisburg. Craig says that being a lawyer was the career he chose, but being a professional speaker was the career that chose him. For the last 9 years, Craig has been inspiring audiences all across the United States and the world. We invited him here today to share his story of perseverance and dealing with the obstacles that life presents without losing your joy in the process. Please join me in welcoming from the class of 1999, Craig Dietz.
Dean Wildermuth, Dean Amy, distinguished faculty, alumni, friends, proud parents, siblings, and spouses, and the graduating class of the University of Pittsburgh School of Law. It is an honor for me to be here with you today. 20 years ago, I was sitting right down where you all are sitting today. Maybe not exactly, because I bring my own chair, but I was down there on the end of an aisle, beaming with pride, as you all should be, for having survived what was definitely the 3 most intense years of my life. Congratulations, class of 2019. Graduating from Pitt Law School was and still is one of the most proudest moments of my life. It was also one of the cruelest jokes that anybody's ever played on me. My graduation was on a Sunday afternoon at the end of May, so I had exactly 12 hours to celebrate before I had to be in Squirrel Hill on Monday morning for my bar review course. It's nice that they've moved it back a few weeks for you guys, and they make it on Friday night, so my advice is that you all take the weekend off. Celebrate this amazing experience with your friends and your family, and then show up on Monday ready to start your job for the next 2 months, and that's studying for the bar exam. When I graduated from law school, the bar exam was incredibly intimidating to me, the prospect of taking the bar exam. I don't know whether you guys have heard this or not, but the bar exam is kind of an intense experience. It would be intimidating to most anybody, but for me, I think it might have been just a little bit worse because I was legitimately concerned about being able to physically sustain the exam because of the way that I write. How I write is I hold the pen or pencil between my shoulder and my chin, kind of like so, and I bend over the table and hold the paper in place with my shoulder, and then move the pen with my shoulder and my chin. So as you can imagine, being torqued up in that position for hours on end, I get quite fatigued, I get cramped, my eyes get very buggy from being too close to the paper. So I was really freaked out by the concept of taking, I was really freaked out by the prospect of 8 hours of multiple choice questions. During my law school years, I was given extra time on my exams to help deal with the fatigue and the cramping. And I probably could have petitioned the bar examiners for a similar type of accommodation, but as I started to think about it, I wasn't really sure that extending it over more than 8 hours a day or extending it over more than 2 days, how much that was really going to benefit me. And I really loved the idea of sitting for the exam in the same room as my classmates that I had studied and suffered with over the last 3 years. So I decided to give it a shot. I took 2 months where I did nothing but study for the bar. I spent hours on end practicing my writing and working up my stamina, and I took the bar exam with no special. I was fortunate enough to pass my first time and move on with my life. But I swear I didn't come here today, though, just to scare the crap out of all of you about the bar exam. And some of you aren't even taking the bar exam anyway. And to those people, I have just one word. But it probably wouldn't be appropriate for me to use that word here, so I'm just going to move on to why I'm really here today. I want to talk to you about a concept that I talk a lot about that I like to call defining your own potential. Now, it's my belief that all of us in the room, we all have the ability to define our own potential in this world, especially you guys sitting in the center aisle here. But what exactly I mean by that is, very often in our lives, we find ourselves in situations where we basically have 2 choices as to how we can react, how we can respond. We can either allow the circumstances that we find ourselves in to control and define us, or we can try to take control of those circumstances. My advice to all of you is to challenge yourselves every day. Every day, challenge yourselves to find some way to take control of your circumstances. Don't be controlled by them. Live your life. Don't let your life live you. And for the love of God, never let anybody tell you what you can or cannot do. People often approach me and they'll tell me how amazed they are by all that I am able to do. And although I appreciate the sentiment, it's a little bit lost on me because I have never defined myself as a person with a disability. I've faced challenges in my life, yeah. But I'm fairly certain that everybody faces challenges in their lives, whether they be physical, emotional, or mental challenges. And I'm also fairly certain that there are times in each of our lives when the challenges that we face can feel like they are overwhelming, just too much. Even Mother Teresa once said, "I know God won't give me anything more than I can handle. I just wish He didn't trust me so much." The challenges that I face may be a little more obvious than most, but I would never presume to say that they're any more difficult than what anybody else may be dealing with in their lives. My main objective in life has always been simple, and that is to not allow the challenges that I face define who I am as a person. It's really only been the last 10 years or so when I've been doing my motivational talks that I've been able to put this philosophy into words, but it's definitely a philosophy that I've lived out my entire life. When I was in high school, I battled the principal head on because he was convinced that I was unable to handle high school without the assistance of student aides, but I knew that I could. When it came time for me to go to college, I chose to go to Duquesne University instead of Edinburgh University, even though at that time, Edinburgh was known as being the best and pretty much the only school in the state of Pennsylvania that was fully equipped to handle students with disabilities. And I also just told you about my bar exam decision, but I also carried this philosophy into the practice of law. One of my defining moments as an attorney came when I was doing personal injury defense for the city of Pittsburgh. In one of my cases, the plaintiff's injury was that she had broken her number 2 toe and cut her toe. Your number 2 toe, just in case you're curious, is the toe right beside your big toe. And as part of her injury, the cuts, they had gotten infected, and she ended up having to have the tip of her number 2 toe amputated. Now, the portion of toe that she had amputated was about the size of your toenail, about the portion of your toenail. So we're talking about a 1/4 inch of toe or so. So before we go to trial, I have the opportunity to take this woman's deposition, and I find myself sitting across the table from her, asking her this question. Ma'am, can you please describe for me how your life has been dramatically affected by the loss of the tip of your toe? it was in moments like that that I began to realize that I was pretty much born to do personal injury litigation, personal injury defense. And I was good at it, and I loved doing it. But the litigation, it wasn't my only passion in life. I've always been a firm believer that in leading a full life and pursuing interests aside from my career and aside from my studies. And one of my biggest interests I've always had has been swimming. I've always been an avid swimmer ever since I was a little kid. And the way I swim is I use a scuba fin. I put a scuba fin on my right leg stub, and I swim on my back. And I basically do an inverted dolphin kick with my lower body using the fin to push me through the water. In 2008, I decided to try open water endurance swimming. So I did the Pittsburgh Triathlon on a relay team with two of my buddies. And the local news media got wind of my effort, and they came and they did a 5-minute blurb on the 5 o'clock news about my swimming and about the Pittsburgh Triathlon. But that blurb went viral online, and people started calling me and contacting me and asking me if I would be interested in coming and speaking to their groups. Now, I truly never aspired to be a motivational speaker. When I first got those calls, my response was the same as when Dean Amy called me to do this speech. What the heck am I going to say? But I'll try anything in life once, so I went and I did a few motivational talks, and I found that I actually did have something to say. And I was good at it, I enjoyed doing it, I loved doing it, and I truly was humbled and surprised by the power that my story had with people. So in 2010, I got married, and I moved from Pittsburgh to Harrisburg to be with my wife, and she was gracious enough at that time to tell me to allow me not to look for a legal job right away when I moved back to Harrisburg, and let me see what I could do with the motivational speaking business. And it's been over 9 years now, and I've never looked back on it. My speaking and my swimming has given me opportunities to meet some really remarkable people and to travel anywhere from New England to New York City to LA to South Africa. And none of it would have ever happened if I hadn't just been committed to defining my own potential and just living my life to the fullest. The last few years, some people have started asking me if I regret going to law school since I'm not currently practicing law. And unless they ask me on the day that my student loan checks are due, I always answer them with a resounding hell no. It was my 3 years here. My 3 years here provided me with the skills and the perseverance and the determination to succeed in anything I decided to do in life, not just being an attorney. Some of you all are going to go on to great successes as attorneys. Some of you are not. But I have every confidence that with the education and the training that you've all received over the last 3 years, you will all go on to great success no matter what you decide to do in your lives. I'm going to end today by telling you about the only swim that I've done that I wasn't able to finish. It was the Great Chesapeake Bay Swim in 2011. This is a 4.5 mile swim across the Chesapeake Bay. You swim between the two bridge spans of the Bay Bridge. It was the longest swim that I had ever done up to that point in my life, and it kicked my butt. And not just the 4 miles, not just the distance. The bay is really not a very friendly swimming environment. There's big choppy waves to deal with, and the current was so strong in a couple points that I had to actually turn my body to a 45-degree angle with the southern bridge span just to keep swimming in a straight line and not be swept off course. But I swam as strong as I could for 3 hours, and I still had about a mile to go. I was in danger of not making the time cutoff to finish. And that's when the storm clouds rolled in. And I was informed by two gentlemen on a jet ski that they had to pull me out of the water because there had been lightning in the area. Finishing that swim in a boat that day was one of the most deflating feelings I've ever had in my life. But now when I look back on it, that is probably the swim that I'm still the most proud of. because I faced some really challenging conditions, but I didn't give up. And the lessons that I learned from that swim laid the foundation for all the longer swims that I would go on to finish in the future after that. My point here is simply this: don't ever be afraid to fail in life. I know that's a little bit of a cliche, but what would a commencement speech be without one good cliche, right? And cliches become cliche for a reason. So seriously, never ever be afraid to fail in your lives. If it makes you feel any better, be like me and don't call them failures, call them learning experiences. I truly believe that there are no failures in our lives if we are able to learn something from that experience and to apply that lesson moving forward in our lives. So to all of you graduates today, I wish you all spectacular learning experiences and that they lay the foundation for even more spectacular successes in your lives. Congratulations, class of 2019.
Thank you, Craig. We are very fortunate to have you with us today, and we thank you for sharing your inspiring story. As an expression of our appreciation, and as a nod to the person who first brought you to our attention, Law Library Director Mark Silverman, we are very pleased today to dedicate a study table in the library to you. This will be signified by a plaque with the following inscription, subject to your edits. To remind us of the passion, resiliency, and determination it takes to be a Pitt Law student, this table will henceforth be known as the Craig Dietz Table, Class of 1999. Define your own potential.
Wow.